This is Diablo 2 Resurrected. We're on Xbox Series X doing a comparison. On the left we have the updated modern visuals. On the right we have the original game. For context, you can switch between the two versions on the particular platform by using LT plus the back button, and it's instant, similar to say Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary or Halo 2 Anniversary. Now these videos are a lot of work to put together, so be sure to like the video, and subscribing is great as well. So with that, this should be a good representation of the visuals across really any of the platforms, seeing how they go up against one another, with about 20 years of difference between the two of them. It's really quite cool, and it's amazing to see how far we've come in the last couple decades. Now, with that, we should keep in mind that on the left, visually, we are getting a 4K, I believe, dynamic resolution at 60 FPS. On the right, it's the 800 by 600. Both sides have different choices. I originally actually looked at doing this with a quality mode on Series X for the left presentation, but I felt that the 30 FPS didn't quite show off the change like the 60 FPS did, so ultimately I went with that choice, because typically I like to show the best visuals in this comparison type thing, but I feel like that just doesn't do the fluidity change justice. Anyways, moving past that, the one on the right does also have a number of tweaking choices. There's two options, the 800 by 600 and then another one. So I guess it's kind of like your choices between what style you want to see zoom in wise, and I was pretty happy with what I went with, but there are other smaller technical tweaks that you can make. It is supposed to have HDR for the full launch, and it'll support up to 8 players, so that can get pretty crazy with the mayhem going on there. So the main point here was to showcase, some of the town areas, some of the quiet spots, and also show off a bit of the combat. I tried my best to line things up, but just keep in mind, Diablo changes things a little bit. There's a day-night cycle, so I tried to get the day kind of matching up to the best, so I'd have to quit out and rejoin, and that would create issues where it's not the same map layout, and that of course can be a problem. So I tried my best to kind of get this set up, so I hope that this is a decent comparison between the two. I've also kind of zoomed in a bit more than you normally would see, just to get rid of the UI at the bottom, and so that you can get these two basically centered and focused beside one another, which is pretty great. And I think you can see just a massive improvement, but yet at the same time, the original visuals have a really nice quality to them. I think mostly now the biggest upgrade for me, aside from the fluidity, is the fact that you can really distinctly see the different enemies. The original one, when you get a lot of enemies in one spot, they tend to bunch together. They've also done a nice selection of aesthetic changes to the overall environment, adding extra gore to the environment, extra like blood on the walls, or extra like bodies, or even smaller things like extra, say, crates on the side, or they've blown out an area, or they've added a little tiny crevice or something like that. Just nice little touches to improve the overall experience all these years later. And I think that's going to be appreciated for a lot of fans of the series to see this big change between the two of them. And it's just really neat to see them going side by side. Keeping in mind, for now, we're doing a side by side, but later on in the video, you'll actually see a kind of a changing one where I show this area this way, and then I kind of change it, and I change it again, and I move, and I change things as we're going through it, just so you can see it in a full screen capacity as well. But the key focus here, as soon as I played this game and I was doing the back and forth, I was like, I have to do a side by side here, because I think it's going to look really, really cool, and just kind of showcase, just this massive jump in visual quality. It's kind of crazy for me to see, these changes here. And you really get a look at the architecture with this combat spot. I really enjoyed this particular area going through here to kind of showcase it, because it's just got like a lot of detail in the environment and a lot of distinct kind of areas. But at the same time, when you're moving through it, even if you're in a different spot, say I'm in the left corner on the left hand side and the right corner on the right hand side, it still looks similar enough where you can kind of be like, oh, I see the differences in the stone architecture, I see the differences in some of the character, the grass, the ambience of the environment. And they've just done a lot for some of the particle elements of the game, and I figured instead of doing it straight in a row, I'd put some combat in and then have some more quieter moments, because I want you to be able to see both of them. I'll also mention for context that the left side is where we're getting our audio output, if you weren't aware, just so that you do have that idea there. I always like to put the best version just on the left, because it seems to draw the attention of folks when you first look at things, and then you can go to the right and you could be like, wow, this is, to me this is quite a difference. They really did upgrade this to like a very high degree. It's a modern game, and I feel like more games again should be doing this sort of thing where we can switch between the two options so that we can see where we've come from. And I know that's not easy to do, but I do quite love that it's an option. Even when you come to this camp here, you can kind of see the big difference, and I hope the time of day isn't too bad between them. I also noticed that the original version tends to be a little bit darker in scenarios, but at the same time highlight more spots. And another thing that you're not seeing with the sort of cut-off screen is the fact that the new version obviously gives you a full screen, whereas the original kind of cuts off the sides, so you don't get that full scope. So you actually get a bit more distance, but at the same time, when you're going out like caves, the original version gives you a little bit more of a sight, because the new version kind of cuts things off and adds a bit more to the dark ambience of the environment. So this part was also kind of hard to line up. I hope to a degree that you're seeing the differences here, just because the pathing is kind of different when you go through it. And it was just a little bit harder to get these perfectly set against one another. But I hope you get an idea of the difference between the two. And it's just a momentary scene as well, as we switch up again so that you see something a little bit more combative and perhaps more well known. Tried to do that balance of, traversing through the overall, overworld, while at the same time giving you some of that, I guess you could call it underworld to a degree, dungeon type scenarios where the combat and the fighting happens, because that's where a lot of your Diablo 2 grind is going to be, right? Is going through the jail areas and the Coliseum areas and stuff like that. I think that, that it makes sense. Anyways, we were also limited by the axe. You don't necessarily get a lot in this particular beta, because this is when all this footage was done. So we didn't get to see the full sense or scope of the game. So I hope the areas that are presented are kind of like, oh, I know that spot, and wow, this is quite a big upgrade over that initial one. That's really cool to see. And also the music is just absolutely gorgeous in this game. Seriously, it's just, if gorgeous, you could apply that to something that you hear, but it really, really sounds just fantastic when you're going through it. Got such a nice level of ambience to the game. But here you're going to notice a big change within the jail. You'll see that there's like a lot more going on in the environments, but yet that original style of environment is very much captured in the new one. They've just went a little bit further with some of the elements of the visuals, and I think that's definitely appreciated for a better overall experience and basically just style in this one too, which is really quite cool. And then we're just continuing along. We're almost done this jail type area, and then we'll be going through one more walking spot, which I thought was kind of a place you might spend some time in the dark woods, just to show this area off, because it's a bit more treed and you get quite a good quantity of enemies going around it. Again, very hard to line this up. And then after this brief segment, you will start to see a change between the two of them, where I'm going in and out, so that you can just kind of get a motion change of what's going on there. Some spots where I'm standing still, others where I'm working through the environment, because I thought it was a good combination between the two of them, just so that you could see that in action and get a further idea of everything in motion with the full screen presentation. Because again, this is just, split screen, so that you can be like, wow, almost after and then before, which is kind of funny. But I hope you do enjoy these types of presentations. Again, liking the video is great, subscribing is awesome as well, because these are quite a bit of work to put together, as I did mention, and I don't normally place that in videos, but yeah, they definitely are quite a bit to edit. But it is fun, and it's really cool to see the differences in the technology. It really is quite marvelous to see how far we've come in such a short span of time. I'm just thinking, another couple decades from now, they're probably going to do another upgrade or something like that to some of these games, and you're just going to be like, wow, this is, even more phenomenally improved over what we had. It's just crazy to think about where it could go and where we are now. So at this point, we are transitioning over to that point where you are going to get a full screen showcase of the game. Again, some moments where I'm sort of standing and just flopping in and out, some where I'm moving very fast, and I thought this was just a really peaceful way to kind of showcase, some of the changes in the visuals to a fuller capacity, so you get that full screen presentation, be like, wow, this looks different than that. And it will be of a few different areas, and at that point, that's all I have left to say. I hope you enjoyed this look at Diablo 2 Resurrected, and we might be doing something similar for the full release of the game as well, but I thought for now, this is kind of a good presentation of where we've been and how far we've come technology-wise, and it looks really cool seeing the difference, like just amazing.
I can't carry anymore.